Okay, getting everything set up and ready, waiting for the streams to kick in so I can do an audio test real quick. Make sure that YouTube's got my stream in the right playlist, stuff like that. Let me see. Sounds good on YouTube. Doing a live stream for the playlist and then thumbnail. And this is Weird Science. I don't even know for sure if I have any photos for or thumbnails for Weird Science, to be honest with you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I can just pick one out, I guess. Go ahead. Oh no, I ain't even gonna play around like that. Heck, yeah, they don't even. I'll just go ahead and leave it at that. Gotta excuse me today too. I have a bit of a head cold, so I am not thinking all that well. I almost went and started streaming or getting. I actually went and started getting it set up to do censorship sucks, which is later on today. I thought I had to do that one, so I'm kind of not all there at the moment. Okay, checking the audio. For audio is good on Kick. Audio is good on YouTube. Audio sounds like it's good on Twitch and D Live. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, D Live is up and running, so we are good to go. Today is Sunday. It's my episode, my next episode for Weird Science. So I might as well just go ahead and get it started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the wonderful world of weirdness and strange stories. I am Roger Hanson. Today I am doing an episode of Weird Science. This is, uh, I believe, the third or fourth episode. I'm not quite sure. It could be more. But anyhow, I have pulled up some more topics that I wanted to talk about when it comes to weird science. I've also been debating on it, and I think that I'm going to actually do some weird science that pertains to history as well, because there's a lot of weird stuff that took place uh, back in the day when it comes to science and things of that nature. So I may be coming out with some weird science that involves historical events that took place too. So, like I said, my name is Roger Hanson. I'm your host for today. And with that, I'm going to get on with the readings. Among many strange transmissions that have puzzled listeners around the world, none is more haunting and enigmatic than the signal known as the buzzer. This curious radio signal, commonly referred to by designation UVB 76, has been broadcasting from somewhere in Eastern Europe, likely within the borders of Russia, since at least the last 1970s or early 90s or early 1980s or early 1980s. Its transmission it transmits on the frequency 4,650 kilohertz on shortwave radio, and is most famous for its repetitive droning buzz that plays continuously throughout the day and night. Despite decades of attention from radio operators, conspiracy theorists, and curious minds alike, the true purpose of this signal remains officially unexplained. The signal's basic structure is simple and persistent. It consists of a short buzzing tone that repeats approximately 25 times per minute. This drone is consistent, mechanical, and monotonous, lasting day after day without interruption. However, at irregular intervals, the buzzing stops and is replaced by voice transmissions. These voice messages are always delivered in Russian and are often cryptic, consisting of strings of seemingly meaningless words, names, or numbers. For example, a typical message might say something like Anna 19, Irvin Tikhon 073, followed by a pause and then a resumption of the buzzing. Such messages occur sporadically, with long periods of buzzing in between. The origin and purpose of the buzzer has been the subject of extensive speculation. Early on, listeners assumed it might be some kind of military communication system. Its continuous operation and the use of Russian language suggests it was a government-run station, because the messages appeared coded and irregular. The idea developed that this was a form of numbers station, a type of clandestine broadcast used to connect or to communicate with spies or military personnel using one-time pad encryption. However, the buzzer differed in tone and content from other known number stations. Most number stations are clearly structured, containing large amounts of speech, and are run for limited durations. The buzzer, on the other hand, transmitted its peculiar tone continuously, regardless of whether there were voice messages or not. One theory that has persisted over time is that the buzzer is a military channel marker. In radio communication, a channel marker is used to keep a frequency open, making sure it remains reserved for future use by the entity that owns it. The constant buzzing would prevent others from using the frequency and make it easy for operators to locate and resume communication if needed. Under this interpretation, the voice messages are real-time orders or test messages for military units. Another theory, more ominous and speculative, is that the buzzer is a component of a doomsday communication system. Some have connected it to a supposed nuclear retaliation system known colloquially as the dead hand. According to this theory, if the signal even ever stops permanently, it would indicate that the command structure had been destroyed, and an automated response would be triggered to ensure mutual destruction. There is no public confirmation of this, but the idea continues to hold a strong place in the lore that surrounds the buzzer. Occasionally, the station behaves in ways that further deepen the mystery. On rare occasions, the buzzing has been replaced by unusual audio fragments, such as snippets of music, background conversation, or mechanical noises. These occurrences suggest that the broadcast is not entirely automated and that someone, somewhere, monitors or operates the signal manually, at least some of the time. At various points in its history, UVB 76 has also changed its transmission characteristics, such as shifting its broadcast frequency slightly or moving its apparent location. Amateur radio direction finding efforts have traced the signal into various locations in Russia, including near the city of St. Petersburg and other military or government facilities. While most theories suggest military intelligence origins, not all interpretations are purely utilitarian. Some have imagined that the buzzer is a form of psychological operation designed to sow unease or confusion among those who happen upon it. Its eerie, ceaseless sound and cryptic interpretations have certainly contributed to its mystique, capturing the imaginations of those who listen. In this context, it becomes more than a communications tool. It becomes a symbol of the unknown and unknowable. Adding to its mythos, the buzzer has entered popular culture and inspired countless works of fiction, music, and internet discussion. And online communities dedicated to mysterious broadcasts and numbers stations. UVB 76 often appears as a central topic of debate. Some users monitor the frequency 24 hours a day, sharing any anomalies or new voice messages with others. Entire forums and databases have been created to catalog each transmission, building a shared archive of the buzzer's activity that stretches back decades. Despite this global attention, no official source has ever publicly acknowledged the purpose of the buzzer. Russia or Russian authorities have not confirmed nor denied its origin, leaving researchers to piece together information from direct evidence. Attempts to contact institutions or individuals associated with the signal have been met with silence or dismissal. As a result, even the most plausible theories remain unverified. Part of the fascination with the buzzer lies in its persistence. It has continued to broadcast through global upheavals, technological revolutions, and political changes. During the collapse of the Soviet Union, the rise of the internet, and the modernization of communication technologies, the buzzer has remained unchanged in its essential character. This endurance gives it a ghostly, timeless quality, as if it belongs to another era, yet refuses to fade away. There is also the haunting possibility that the people who originally created the buzzer may no longer even remember why it was made. In a large bureaucracy or military organization, systems and protocols can outlive their original purpose, becoming ritualistic artifacts. The buzzer might continue simply because it always has, maintained by technicians who were trained to keep it running but never told why. For some listeners, this notion is the most unsettling of all. A machine that hums forever without meaning, maintained out of habit or fear of consequences, embodies a kind of modern existential dread. It reflects how technology can outpace our understanding and how institutions can become divorced from the human needs they were meant to serve. Genetic pollution refers to the uncontrolled or unintended spread of genetic material, usually from domesticated, genetically modified, or non native species, into wild populations. This phenomenon has raised serious concerns among ecologists, geneticists, conserv- conservationists, and farmers because it can alter the genetic integrity of natural species, sometimes in irreversible and harmful ways. The term is most commonly used in reference to genetically engineered crops and organisms, but it also applies to any situation where artificial or foreign genes make their way into wild gene pools through natural reproductive processes like pollination and breeding. The basic mechanisms of genetic pollution is simple. When a plant or animal that carries engineered or selectively bred genes produces with a wild relative, it gener- it, no, its genetic material may be passed on to offspring. This gene flow can happen through wild insects, water. No, this flow can happen through wind, insects, water, or animal carriers. In the case of plants, pollen from a genetically modified crop can travel and fertilize wild or native plant varieties, introducing genes that were never part of the wild population's evolutionary history. Similarly, domesticated animals released into the wild, intentionally or accidentally, can breed with their wild counterparts and introduce altered traits into the population. One of the most prominent and controversial examples of genetic pollution comes from genetically engineered crops. In many countries, especially those with large-scale industrial agriculture, crops like corn, soybean, canola, and cotton have been genetically modified to resist pests, tolerate herbicides, or improve yields. These modified plants can and often do cross-pollinate with nearby non-modified or wild relatives. Once the modified genes enter the wild gene pool, they are difficult or impossible to remove. This has led to legal, ecological, and agricultural challenges. Organic farms, for instance, face the threat of contamination, which can disqualify their produce, which can disqualify their produce from organic certification and affect marketability. The ecological consequences of genetic pollution can be profound. One major concern is the potential loss of genetic diversity. Wild populations rely on a broad genetic base to adapt to changing environmental conditions, resist diseases, maintain overall ecosystem balance. When foreign genes, especially those tailored for specific traits, enter a wild population, they may outcompete or replace native genes. This can lead to what is known as genetic swamping, where the wild genome is gradually diluted or replaced. Over time, this reduces the evolutionary flexibility and resilience of the population, making it more vulnerable to disease, climate change, and other pressures. Another risk involves the creation of hybrid organisms that possess a mix of wild and domesticated traits. These hybrids may have unpredictable fitness in natural environments. In some cases, they may be less capable of surviving and reproducing, leading to a decline in the overall population. In other cases, they may be more aggressive or better adapted in ways that allow them to dominate local ecosystems, outcompeting other species and upsetting the ecological balances. For example, a genetically modified fish that grows faster than its wild relatives could outcompete them for food and breeding space, leading to population crashes. Genetic pollution also poses risks to indigenous knowledge systems and cultural heritage. In many parts of the world, traditional farming communities have developed and maintained unique crop varieties over generations, adapted to specific soils, climates, and cultural needs. These heirloom varieties represent a deep reservoir of genetic diversity and cultural identity. When genetically modified crops are introduced nearby, the risk of cross-pollination threatens the purity and uniqueness of these traditional strains. Once contamination occurs, it may not be possible to restore the original variety, resulting in permanent loss of agricultural heritage. Legal and ethical issues further complicate the picture. In some cases, companies that hold patents or genetically modified organisms that hold patents on in some cases companies that hold patents on genetically modified organisms have pursued legal action against farmers whose fields were found to contain patent genes, even if the contamination was accidental. This has raised serious questions about responsibility, ownership, and liability. Should a farmer be punished for genetic drift they did not intend or control? Should corporations bear responsibility uh, for preventing their proprietary genes from spreading into ecosystems and private lands? Efforts to prevent genetic pollution are ongoing but face many challenges. Isolation, distances between genetically modified and non modified crops are one strategy, but pollen can travel long distances depending on wind patterns and pollinators. Physical barriers and buffer zones can help, but they are not foolproof. Seed banks and preservation programs aim to conserve pure genetic lines, but these too require rigorous protection and documentation. In animal populations, preventing escape from fish farms or livestock enclosures is critical, but escapes still occur due to natural disasters, human error, or infrastructure failure. Some scientists have proposed genetic use restriction technologies, also known as terminator genes, which are designed to prevent modified organisms from reproducing. These methods, however, have faced ethical opposition and have not been widely adopted. Others suggest that better labeling, stricter regulations, and more transparent risk assessment are needed before genetically modified organisms are introduced into new environments. It is also important to distinguish between intentional genetic modification and more traditional selective breeding. Though both can result in gene flow, selective breeding involves choosing parent organisms with desired traits to produce offspring with those traits. Over time, this can create new breeds or varieties that differ significantly from their wild ancestors. If these domesticated forms escape or are released into the wild, they too can affect native gene pools. In many cases, the results are not beneficial. Wild trout populations, for example, have been weakened by interbreeding with domesticated trout used in fish stocking programs, leading to reduced survival and reproductive success. Beyond agriculture and aquaculture, genetic pollution has implications for conservation biology and the protection of endangered species. Efforts to breed endangered animals in captivity sometimes results in the introduction of non-native genes, either through hybridization or poorly documented lineages. Reintroducing these individuals into the wild may compromise the genetic integrity of the remaining wild population. Similarly, planting non-local seed variations in restoration in restoration projects can lead to genetic hemo, hem- hem- homogenization. homogenization, where local adaptations are lost. In the broader philosophical sense, genetic pollution reflects a fundamental tension between human technological progress and the natural world. Our ability to manipulate genes has far outpaced our ability to foresee and control the long-term consequences of those manipulations. As with many other environmental issues, the damage is often subtle, slow-moving, and difficult to reverse once it begins. The challenge lies in the balancing innovation. No, the challenge lies in balancing innovation with caution, recognizing that once a gene escapes into the wild, it becomes part of a larger ecological story that cannot be undone. The Hebrew or Jewish calendar is a complex and ancient system of timekeeping that has guided the religious and cultural life of the Jewish people for thousands of years. Unlike the Gregorian calendar, which is purely solar and used by most of the modern world, the Jewish calendar is lunisolar, meaning it incorporates both lunar months and solar years and the solar year. This blending of celestial cycles creates a system that is both astronomically rich and deeply tied to religious observances, agricultural rhythms, and historical remembrance. The structure of the Jewish calendar is based on the phases of the moon. Each month begins with the new moon and a full moon of the month, approximately 29 and one half days, determines the length of the month. To maintain harmony with the solar year, which is about 11 days longer than the 12-month lunar year, the calendar periodically adds a 13-month in certain years. This adjustment ensures that the major holidays remain aligned with their appropriate seasons, especially the spring festivals of Passover and Shavuot, and the autumn observance of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot. A typical year in the Jewish calendar contains 12 months, but in a leap year, an extra month is inserted. This leap year is called Adar Aleph and precedes the regular month of Adar, which becomes Adar Bet during such years. The addition of this month follows a 19-year cycle in which 7 of the years include the leap month. This 19-year cycle, known as the Metonic cycle, was adopted in ancient times to harmonize lunar and solar calendars and has remained a central feature in Jewish timekeeping. The names of the months in the Jewish calendar were adopted during the Babylonian exile and are still in use today. They are in order: Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Teshri, Chesvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shabbat, and Adar. In leap years, the added month Adar Aleph is inserted between Shabbat and Adar Bet. Each of these months has specific associations with agriculture, historical, and religious events. For example, Nisan is the month in which Passover occurs, commemorating the Exodus from Egypt, and Tishrei contains the high holy days of the festival of Sukkot. Days in the Jewish calendar begin at sunset rather than at midnight, as in the Gregorian system. This convention is rooted in the biblical account of creation, which repeatedly states, "And there was evening and there was morning." As a result, all Jewish holidays and observances begins at sundown and continue until the following evening. This rhythm reflects a worldview in which rest, reflection, and spiritual preparation begin as darkness falls, ushering in a sacred time. The Jewish week consists of 7 days, culminating in the Sabbath or Shabbat, which begins at sundown on Friday and ends at nightfall on Saturday. Shabbat is considered a central pillar of Jewish life, a day set apart for rest, worship, and family. It is a time when work is prohibited and spiritual renewal is emphasized. The 7-day week is one of the most ancient and enduring aspects of the Jewish calendar. It has been adopted by many cultures around the world. The Jewish calendar also marks years from a traditional count that begins with the creation of the world, as calculated by ancient rabbinical scholars, using genealogies and events described in the Hebrew Bible. According to this calculation, the current year is more than 5,000 years since creation. This reckoning is not meant to be a scientific chronology, but rather a sacred timeline that frames Jewish history within a divine narrative. Several important holidays are fixed in the Jewish calendar, each with its own religious significance and observances. Passover, beginning on the 15th of Nisan, commemorates the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt or Egyptian slavery. It is celebrated with the Seder meal and the recitation of the Haggadah. Sabbath, occurring 7 weeks after Passover, marks the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year's, falls on the 1st of Tishri and is the time of reflection and repentance. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, follows 10 days later and is the most solemn day of the year, devoted to fasting, prayer, and seeking forgiveness. Sukkot, a harvest festival, begins 5 days after Yom Kippur and is observed by dwelling in temporary structures called Sukkot. Other holidays include Hanukkah, which celebrates the rededication of the Temple of Jerusalem, and the miracle of the oil, and Purim, Purim, which commemorates the deliverance of the Jews from a plot of extermination in the ancient Persian as no, which commemorates the deliverance of the Jews from a plot of extermination in ancient Persia, as recounted in the book of Esther. These holidays fall on specific days or dates in the Jewish calendar and vary from year to year in the Gregorian calendar due to the differences between lunar and solar cycles. In addition to the major holidays, the calendar includes fast days, memorial days, and minor festivals. Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, is a day of mourning for the destruction of the first and second temples in Jerusalem. To be Shavat, the 15th of Shavat, is known as the Year of Trees and is often marked by planting trees and eating fruits native to the land of Israel. Calculating the calendar and determining the dates of holidays historically required careful observation and mathematical expertise. In ancient times, new months were declared based on eyewitness testimony of the new moon. And the Sanhedrin, the high court in Jerusalem, would have officially proclaimed the start of the month. Over time, as the diaspora spread and central authority waned, the calendar was fixed using a mathematical algorithm developed by Hillel II in the 4th century. This fixed calendar is still used today and enables Jews around the world to observe holidays at the same time, regardless of location. The Julian calendar stands as one of the most significant reforms in the history of timekeeping. And its introduction marked a turning point in how the Western world measured and organized time. Before the Julian reform, the Roman calendar was a chaotic and politically manipulated system, prone to irregularities and inconsistencies. Julius Caesar recognized the need for order and standardization, Julius Caesar, recognizing the need for order and standardization, implemented the new calendar in the year 46 before the Common Era, a year that would later become known as the last year of confusion due to the extraordinary adjustments made to bring the calendar back into alignment with the seasons. The pre-Julian Roman calendar was a lunar-based system that included 12 months, but was regularly manipulated by adding or omitting days or even entire months. These decisions were often made by pontifices, religious officials who had the power to lengthen or shorten who had the power to lengthen or shorten the calendar to favor political outcomes. This led to widespread confusion and made it difficult for the general population to track dates and plan agricultural or civic activities. The system had fallen out of sync with the solar year. And by the time of Julius Caesar's rule, the misalignment was significant enough to warrant drastic corrections. Caesar, advised by the Alexandrian astronomer Sosigenes, sought to create a calendar that would be based on a solar year rather than the lunar cycle. The solar year, or the time it takes the Earth to complete one orbit around the Sun, was understood to be slightly longer than 365 days. Sosigenes recommended adopting a calendar of 365 days, with an additional day added every fourth year to account for the fractional discrepancy, creating what would later be known as a leap year. This system approximated the solar year with much greater accuracy than its predecessor. To realign the calendar with the seasons, the year of implementation was extended dramatically. The year 46 before the Common Era was made to include 445 days by inserting multiple intercalary months. This drastic measure effectively reset the calendar, aligning it properly with the solar cycle and restoring the intended timing of the festivals and agricultural events. From that point forward, the Julian calendar would feature 12 months of fixed lengths: January, March, May, July, August, October, and December would each have 31 days. April, June, September, and November would have 30 days, and February would have 28 days, with a 29th day added every fourth year. One of the key innovations of the Julian calendar was the regularization of leap years. Every fourth year, an additional day would be added to February, making that year 366 days long. This approach provided a straightforward mechanism to approximate the actual solar year, which is approximately 365 and 1/4 days. While the system was not perfect, it represented a significant improvement over earlier calendars and provided a reliable framework for managing civic, agricultural, and religious life. The Julian calendar was gradually adopted throughout the Roman Empire and became the standard for timekeeping in the Western world for more than 16 centuries. Its influence extended far beyond the borders of Rome, shaping the calendars of numerous cultures and societies. Over time, however, the small discrepancy between the Julian calendar and the actual solar year began to accumulate. The Julian year was approximately 11 minutes longer than the solar year, which meant that over the course of centuries, the calendar began to drift out of alignment with the equinox and solstices. This drift had significant implications for the calculation of Christian holidays, particularly Easter, which was tied to the timing of the vernal equinox. By the 16th century, the cumulative error had reached approximately 10 days. The cumulative error had reached approximately 10 days, prompting Pope Gregory XIII to introduce a new reform, the Gregorian calendar. Introduced in the year 1582, corrected the drift by adjusting the leap year rules and eliminating 10 days from the calendar to realign it with the solar year. Despite this reform, the Julian calendar continued to be used in many parts of the world for centuries. The Julian calendar remains in use today in some religious and cultural contexts. Several Eastern Orthodox churches continue to follow the Julian calendar for the calculations of liturgical dates and holidays. As a result, celebrations such as Christmas and Easter are observed on different dates than those in Western Christian traditions that follow the Gregorian calendar. The persistence of the Julian calendar in these communities reflects its enduring cultural and spiritual significance, even in the face of more precise astronomical alternatives. The legacy of the Julian calendar is evident in the names and lengths of the months we still use today. For example, the month of July was renamed in honor of Julius Caesar, while August was renamed after his predecessor, Augustus. These months were assigned 31 days to reflect the prestige of their namesakes. This legacy is a testament to the enduring influence of Roman political and cultural authority on subsequent generations. In addition to its practical and political implications, the Julian calendar also represents a moment of scientific advancement. The decision to base the calendar on the solar year, informed by observations of calculation from Hellenistic astronomy, marked a significant step towards the modern scientific understanding of time. It demonstrated a commitment to empirical observation and rational organization, principles that would later underpin the development of the modern scientific method. The Julian calendar also had a profound impact on historical chronology and the recording of events. With standardized and widely adopted systems of timekeeping, it became possible to more accurately document the passage of time, coordinate events across vast territories, and preserve historical records in a consistent format. This facilitated the development of more coherent historical narratives and enabled the synchronization of civic, religious, and agricultural schedules across the empire. Despite its eventual replacement in most parts of the world, the Julian calendar's influence remains visible in many aspects of contemporary life. The names of the months, the structure of the year, and even the concept of leap years all trace their origins to the reforms initiated by Julius Caesar. Moreover, the debates and discussions that surrounded the calendar reforms of both the Julian and Gregorian systems highlight the complex interplay between science, religion, and politics in shaping how societies understand and measure time. The transition from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar was not immediate or universal. Many countries resisted the change for political, religious, or practical reasons. Protestant regions had particular No, Protestant regions in particular were initially suspicious of a calendar introduced by the Catholic Church. As a, re- as a result, the adoption of the Gregorian calendar occurred gradually over several centuries. Britain and its colonies, for example, did not make the switch until the mid 18th century, by, by which time the discrepancy had grown to 11 days. This delay led to public confusion and protests, which some people believing that they had lost days from the no, which some people believing that they had lost days from their lives. In the Eastern Orthodox world, resistance to the Gregorian reform was even more profound. Many Orthodox churches continued to use the Julian calendar for liturgical purposes, creating a dual calendar system in which civil and religious observations followed different timelines. This coexistence of calendars reflects the enduring cultural and theological distinctions that continue to shape religious identity and practice. The Gregorian calendar, widely used across most of the modern world, stands as one of the most influential timekeeping systems in history. It stands as one of the most influential timekeeping systems in history. It succeeded the Julian calendar, which had served the Western world for over 15 centuries, but had accumulated a gradual drift from the solar year due to a small yet persistent miscalculation. The Gregorian reform sought to correct this misalignment and refine the structure of leap years, leading to the calendar that governs civil and religious life in much of the of the globe today. To understand the significance of the Gregorian calendar, one must first consider the context of the Julian system. The Julian calendar, introduced by Julius Caesar in the mid first century before the Common Era, was based on the assumption that the solar year, the time it takes Earth to complete one orbit around the Sun, lasted exactly 365 and one quarter days. To approximate this, the calendar added an extra day every fourth year, creating what became known as a leap year. This method brought a greater sense of order and predictability to Roman and later Christian societies. However, the solar year is slightly shorter than 365 and 1/4 days. Its true length is closer to 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds. Though the discrepancy was minor, accumulating only a fraction of the day per year, it added up over the centuries. By the 16th century, the calendar was roughly 10 days out of alignment with the actual solar year. This drift affected the timing of the equinox and solstices, which in turn disrupted the calculation of important religious holidays, especially Easter. The Council of Nicaea in the early 4th century had established that Easter should be celebrated on the Sunday following the first full moon after the vernal equinox. With the calendar out of sync, the date of Easter was moving further away from the intended seasonal alignment. This inconsistency prompted growing concern within the Roman Catholic Church. By the time Pope Gregory XIII, the need for reform had become urgent. Pope Gregory XIII commissioned a group of scholars, astronomers, and mathematicians to address the problem. Chief among them was the Italian scientist Aloysius Lelius, whose proposals formed the foundation of the new system. The Gregorian reform, implemented in the year 1582, introduced two major changes. First, it removed 10 days from the calendar to realign it with the solar year. In countries that adopted the reforms immediately, the calendar jumped directly from the 4th of October to the 15th of October. Second, the leap year rule was adjusted to prevent future drift. Under the new rule, the year would be leap year, Under the new rule, a year would be a leap year if divisible by 4, except for years except for years divisible by 100, unless also divisible by 400. This modification eliminated 3 leap years every 4 centuries, bringing the average year length closer to the actual solar year. The implementation of the Gregorian calendar began in predominantly Catholic countries, including Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Poland. However, its adoption was not universal or immediate. Protestants in Orthodox regions were initially skeptical, viewing the reform as a Catholic imposition. England and its colonies, for example, did not adopt the Gregorian calendar until the year 1752. By that time, the discrepancy had grown to 11 days, and the calendar was adjusted accordingly. The delay led to public confusion and protests, which some citizens believed that the government had stolen days from their lives. Despite the initial resistance, the Gregorian calendar gradually gained acceptance due to its superior accuracy and practical benefits. Over time, most countries transitioned to the new system of for civil purposes. In some places, religious observances continued to follow the Julian calendar for a period, creating a temporary dual calendar environment. Eventually, even more Eastern Orthodox churches adopted the Gregorian calendar for fixed date celebrations, which retained the Julian calendar while retaining the Julian calendar for movable feasts such as Easter. The Gregorian calendar consists of 12 months, just like the Julian system, but its leap year rules make it more precise. The 3 months alternate between 30 and 31 days, except for February, which has 28 days in a common year, 29 days in a leap year. The cycle of leap years ensures that the calendar remains closely aligned with the Earth's revolutions around the Sun, minimizing seasonal drift. Beyond its technical improvements, the Gregorian calendar had far-reaching cultural, political, and religious consequences. Its adoption facilitated international coordination, standardization of dates, and the development of modern historical chronology. It also reflected the growing influence of empirical science and mathematical precision in shaping human understanding and organization of time. The reform marked a significant step in the transition from medieval to modern worldviews. One of the notable features of the Gregorian calendar is its enduring impact on global society. Today it is the internationally recognized standard for civil timekeeping. Governments, businesses, scientists, institutions, and educational systems around the world rely on it for scheduling, recording, keeping, and record keeping. Right. Yeah, here we go. Let's start that one over again. Today, it is the most internationally recognized standard for civil timekeeping. Governments, businesses, scientists, institutions, and educational systems around the world rely on it for scheduling, record keeping, and communication. Its structure has become deeply embedded in the rhythm of daily life, shaping how people experience and measure the passage of time. The Gregorian calendar's influence extends to language and culture as well. The names of the months, inherited from the Roman calendar, are widely used in multiple languages. The division of the year into weeks of 7 days, though not unique to the Gregorian system, remains a central organizing principle. Holidays, seasons, fiscal quarters, and school terms are all framed by its structure. This widespread adoption has helped to unify human activities across geographical and cultural boundaries. Despite its broad acceptance, the Gregorian calendar is not without critics and alternative proposals. Some have suggested reforms to make months more uniform in length, or to establish permanent calendars with fixed days of the week for specific dates. Others have explored lunisolar calendars or revived interest in ancient systems. However, the entrenchment of the Gregorian calendar in global infrastructure has made such changes unlikely. The cost and complexity of transition to a new calendar system would be immense. Religious and cultural groups that maintain alternative calendars continue to observe their own timekeeping systems alongside the Gregorian calendar. The Islamic calendar, based on lunar cycles, and the Hebrew calendar, which is lunisolar, are also prominent examples. These calendars play vital roles in the spiritual and communal lives of their adherents, guiding rituals, festivals, and historical commemorations. In many cases, these systems coexist with the Gregorian calendar, illustrating the diversity of temporal frameworks in human society. Success of the Gregorian calendar lies in its balance of astronomical occurrences, administrative simplicity, and historical continuity. By correcting the shortcomings of the Julian calendar while preserving its familiar structure, the Gregorian reform achieved a lasting solution to the problem of seasonal drift. It harmonized the measurements of time with the rhythm of nature and provided a stable foundation for organizing human affairs. Okay, so I am done. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I am sick and I cannot stay awake very much. I'm going to go take my medicine and get some sleep. I've checked the chats. Penny Rollins says hello from West Virginia on YouTube. The Wonderful World of Weirdness. Thank you, Penny Rollins from West Virginia, for coming in and saying hello. Hello back to you from West Frankfort, Illinois. Other than that, we are good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We are streaming on Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, DLive, and Kick. So if you guys want to check us out on there, you're more than welcome. You can also find us on Teams at Live with Roger Hanson, or on Discord at The Wonderful World of Weirdness. We're also on Elements Matrix. You can find us at Live with Roger Hanson there too. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to get off of here and go take my medicine. I hope you guys have a good day, and hopefully I'll have one later on too when I start feeling better. So I will talk to you later, guys. Have a good night.